Oklahoma victorious in the Cotton Bowl over the arch rival Texas Longhorns. Kansas State on the horizon for the Sooners. What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Hofeld, fighting through the cold to be strong and do this.
The
for
cold,
you.
like the cold weather?
No, the cold of what's going on in my head right now.
Dense fog.
Dense fog, yeah, for sure. Oklahoma 29-24 over Texas. First question for you, was it as close as you thought it would be?
One of the things, when you ask me these kind of questions, I always consider the kind of rivalry. Mm-hmm. And knowing that Oklahoma-Texas is a big rivalry, you can throw rankings out the window. Because each team is literally bringing their best shot. We've seen Texas come in and knock off a ranked Oklahoma team, even though Texas was unranked at the time. So did I expect a close game? I did. Did I expect it to be 5 points? No, I thought it'd be closer to that 10 mark with an Oklahoma victory.
I think I had it at like 3 points on our prediction. I don't want to go back and look at it, but I had it close. Maybe it's 4. I think I had it 35-31 or something like that. Here's the thing, and you talked about this before we even started rolling. By the way, what's up, Facebook Live? You talked about the trend that Oklahoma's setting, and obviously we talked about it during the game on Saturday. You've got 14-0 on Baylor, 14-0 on Iowa State, 20-0 on Texas. All three of those games, Oklahoma ended up surrendering those leads. The pressure's on Mike Stoops. I don't see how you can look at his post-game interviews from Dallas. That's probably the most emotional I've ever seen Mike Stoops. Talking about how his players have his back, and even use the word slanderous. People are writing slanderous things about him. Maybe they are. I've not seen anything slanderous. I've seen a lot of things out there, and we've even put some things out there questioning the merit of the defense, questioning, I went off last week on fundamentals, how they were, particularly Jordan Thomas, how they weren't fundamentally sound. But to see this team, again, squander a lead, I mean, you have to think, for Oklahoma to go throughout the remainder of this season and make it to the Big 12 championship game and have a shot at the playoff, they're just going to have to win shootouts, are they not? I mean, is that the way you feel looking at this team? We'll get back into Texas later, but
I honestly don't. And the reason being is because the talent level is there. I think there are things you can do schematically. There are different approaches that you can take. And I know you said we'll jump back to Texas, but one of the things I want to point out with Texas was we saw Caleb Kelly play a significantly different role than what we've seen him play in the past. And what do I mean by that is if you go back and you watch the utilization of Caleb Kelly as a linebacker, a lot of it was in the pass rush. It was in blitz packages, creating different angles, creating different opportunities for a guy like Caleb Kelly to make his way into the backfield. Granted, Sam Ehlinger and his athleticism, I think, counteracted a lot of what Mike Stoops was trying to do. We saw all-out blitzes coming in because of the athleticism, the ability to just backpedal and throw it over the top of the defense, mid-range pass, 10 yards or so, and then gaining a ton of yardage after that. So there are some faults with that scheme, obviously. There's still room for improvement, but when you consider what Oklahoma has been doing defensively against the run without a guy like Matt Romar, reintroducing Amani Bledsoe, Devonta Lampkin, they're having a lot of success in stopping the run currently. They're not having a lot of success in stopping the pass.
Which is why I said they're going to have to win shootouts. I mean, when you look at it, Iowa State, Texas, and Baylor are 5, 6, and 7 in the Big 12 in passing offense. Think about that. Mm-hmm. They're 5, 6, and 7 in the Big 12. And Oklahoma has just given up a ton of yards. Now, they didn't give up a ton of yards Saturday to Ehlinger. Here's if I'm in the text, if it's not crimson and cream, it's burnt orange. Here's what I want to know: why did they not attack Jordan Thomas? Why did they choose to go out on Parnell Motley's side more than Jordan Thomas' side? I don't know the answer to that question. But Baylor found something in Jordan Thomas. Iowa State found something in Jordan Thomas. But still, even with all you're saying, and I get the schematics, I'm getting what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fourth quarter comeback win for Oklahoma. It was a shootout.
I don't know that it was a comeback win.
Were they winning when Baker Mayfield hit Mark Andrews? Did that give them the lead, or did that increase their lead?
Did give them the lead,
it was a comeback win.
They held the lead for the
until they lost it. They held the lead until they lost it. It doesn't matter.
So is it a come from behind win, or is it just say who has the ball last?
When you're behind, when you don't have the lead and you score, it's a come from behind win. I mean, there's no other way around it. I mean, they were losing that game until Baker Mayfield hit Mark Andrews. Now, I know what you're saying. Until like the closing minutes, I never really got anxious. When I did get anxious is when Baker Mayfield hits Mark Andrews, and then the defense was coming back out in the field. That's when I got anxious. I wasn't anxious about the offense. I think even with injuries to Abdul Adams, even with CeeDee Lamb not being 100%, and now Jeff Badette going down, even with that, I still feel like this is a very potent offense. But they've got to find a way to quit stalling. Mm-hmm. And the thing, and I don't know if you saw Austin Seibert kind of trolling the Big 12 after the weekly awards. I think he's got a point. When you look at what Austin Seibert did for Oklahoma, he's the unsung hero in this game. When the offense stalled, he was perfect from field goal range. His kickoffs were exceptional, and his punt.
Only one kickoff was returnable.
Right, and then think about the punt when they're paying deep, and he just flips the field on them. I mean,
Matt, I completely agree about Austin Seibert. I don't agree that he's an unsung hero, because I think those that are surrounding the program would definitely. Lincoln Riley even went on to say, I sit down Sunday evening as well as Monday evening, and I watch those Sooner reviews. Mm-hmm. And one thing that Lincoln Riley was very quick to point out was that he said Austin Seibert was his MVP for the game. He didn't go into the Twitter account and seeing Austin Seibert just say what was I forget the term that he used. Snubbed. Snubbed. Austin Seibert just typed out snubbed on Twitter. Everybody knew what that was a reference to when it came to the Big 12 awards. But regardless, I think that people surrounding the program are quick to point that out, that he was the MVP of the game on Saturday.
Well, for sure. I mean, Baker Mayfield's going to do Baker Mayfield things.
Yeah, and can we talk about, because we're talking about the offense stalling out, I think they shot themselves in the foot more than once on Saturday. And the most prime example I can think of is that you have the perfect play in the red zone where Baker Mayfield drops back and Dimitri Flowers is open in the middle of the field, wide open. All he does, that's catch in the backyard for someone of that caliber. So he lobs it over. Dimitri Flowers walks into the end zone untouched. Boom, a holding call. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, 7 points are now off the board. Right. 7 potential points. And did Oklahoma turn the ball over on that same series?
I think they kicked a field goal.
Okay. Well, we have the 4 points there that would have been left, and Texas comes down off that turnover and scores. Did they score I can't remember. I should have looked these up. I can't remember if they scored a field goal or if they scored that touchdown on the turnover from Oklahoma. But we look at the swing there, and all of a sudden you could very potentially blow this game wide open. You erase the turnover. We knew it was going to happen at some point. Didn't know it would happen in such a crucial game like the OU Texas game, and then you have the holding call.
Right. Well, the penalties were ridiculous, in my opinion.
They were. Absolutely.
And I know a lot's been made out of it. Mike Stoops again even said Saturday night, apparently we're the only team in the Big 12 who gets called for holding. That's a kind of a shot. I think I don't know what. I don't know what. I don't know why. But I definitely think there are issues with the Big 12 and Oklahoma. And adversely, that means there's issues with Oklahoma in the Big 12. Because, finally some calls went Oklahoma's way. Oklahoma wasn't penalized in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. And that's where Texas was. So finally, things begin to shift. And to hear Texas fans complain in the fourth quarter about the penalties, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Did you not see the first 3 quarters? But Oklahoma, I said this Saturday after the game, and I put it in print Saturday after the game. I said it after the Iowa State loss. Oklahoma has to play cleaner football. And I like what Lincoln Riley addressed on Monday is that, hey, he said there were missed calls, and we were, there were some missed calls that went in our favor as well. And he said our job is to adjust and educate our guys to play based off of the officiating. And I think he's right. I think he's spot on with that. By the way, Ellinger, 19 of 39 for 278 yards and a touchdown. Not necessarily lighting up the Oklahoma defense, but still. Do you know who the leading rusher was in the Big 12 this last week? Any ideas?
Trey Sermon? I have no idea.
Not Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon almost got to the 100-yard mark, but it was not Trey. Was not Kenny Hill.
I'm just taking stabs in the dark at this point, so you might.
You want one more stab in the dark? I mean, because it's just strike three. I mean,
yeah.
We're winding down baseball season.
Is it? I don't know that many names, unfortunately.
Just grab one out of the sky.
Out of the sky.
But it's got to be a Big 12 player, obviously.
Right.
It's a pretty good running back in Stillwater.
You think so?
I think he's pretty
Justice Hill was the top rusher?
No, he wasn't. I'm just saying he's a pretty good running back.
I didn't think that he was. I don't know. Sam Ellinger?
Sam Ellinger. Leading rusher in the Big 12 this weekend. So, when you talk about flipping the defense and taking away one aspect of it, well, there's a whole other aspect that was open. And Sam Ellinger is a good dual threat guy. He's huge body type. He's strong. Think back to his touchdown. Mm-hmm. He's dragging people into the end. These are defensive linemen and linebackers. He's dragging into the end zone. But here's the thing with Texas. I don't consider Texas to be a dual threat. I feel like if you can stop the running game, you're going to beat Texas. Because I don't have faith in Ellinger to beat me with his arm. Do you? And I think that's kind of what Oklahoma put into play there. Little Jordan Humphrey was 4 receptions for 56 yards. He was the leading receiver for Texas. Texas has the big athletic receivers, and that's what I was worried about going into this. Those big athletic receivers are the ones who have been hurting Oklahoma's defense going back to Baylor. But the other thing I'm worried about is when you look at the pass offense of the last 3 opponents and you see that they're 5, 6, and 7 in the Big 12, well, you got Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and West Virginia are in the top 4, and they're coming up on your schedule. Mm-hmm. So I do think, going back to what I initially said, I do think if Oklahoma wins out, they're going to have to win out some blowout games. I mean, some shootout games. I think Kansas State, there's the potential there for it to be a blowout, but I don't see it. I mean, Kansas State, when we talk about the bottom half of the Big 12, Kansas State is number 10 in passing offense. They've only thrown 7 touchdowns this season. So, and they've got quarterback issues. I don't know what the health of Jesse Ertz. I talked to my friends in Wichita this morning on Fox Radio, and they didn't know the health of Jesse Ertz. So, but when we do our score predictions, I'm predicting Kansas State scores some points, just because everybody else is scoring on this defense. The thing is, can Oklahoma outpace them? And I think for sure Kansas State they can. Your thoughts?
I completely agree with you. Kansas State has always been a team that has exceeded expectations. Unfortunately, this is not that year for them. I think, if anything, they've greatly underwhelmed or lived below those expectations. Because when we were heading into the season, I mean, where did we place Kansas State? They were typically number 3.
Yeah, I had them
at worst, number 4.
Right. I had Oklahoma State, and I want to say it was Kansas State and TCU.
The second thing with Kansas State is I remember us going in and doing kind of our preseason positional rankings. And I know for myself, as well as a couple of other people that write for us, we had the Kansas State secondary as being one of the best.
Right.
Unfortunately, I did a by-the-numbers preview. They're just middle of the road this season, which is improved from last season.
Right, but
still
I think
middle of the road.
I think part of the reason why, and a lot of people overlook this when they're looking at offensive, our defensive, particularly in the secondary. Part of what makes a secondary good or mediocre or bad, well, I'm gonna say good or mediocre. What makes a bad secondary is lack of talent and technique. But what can make a mediocre team good, and what can make a good secondary mediocre is the pass rush. And I don't think Kansas State has that.
They don't. And that is also something that I pointed out. You've got two-time all-conference selection Will Geary. Potentially, well, depending on who you look at, he is the best defensive tackle in the conference.
Right.
He's also their best pass rusher, which is, I feel like, uncommon for a guy in the middle of the defensive line to be your best pass rusher. Typically, it's that defensive end. So I do agree with you. They lack that elite guy on the edge who can get into the backfield, hurry, or force passes a lot quicker than what the quarterback wants to let go of them. If that made any sense at all, that didn't feel like a complete statement. But beside the point, when we're looking at Kansas State versus Oklahoma, I agree with what you had said previously. The Kansas State offense is going to struggle. They've struggled all season long. It's really been their downfall.
Right.
Can they keep pace with any team? I'm not certain. And TCU only allowed them to score two field goals, not even a touchdown on Saturday. So we see a lot of those struggles against top-tier talent. We expect them to go in and beat Vanderbilt. Again, struggles on offense. You only score 7 points in that game. So It's been an all-season long thing. Can they keep pace? No, I don't believe that they can.
Well, again, just kind of looking back over things, I think it was the perfect storm for Kansas State with Jesse Ertz being out, playing the top defense in the Big 12. You know, TCU's only giving up 17.3 points a game in the Big 12. Are you screen peeking and cheating on me?
Yeah, I was wanting to know what site you're using
and
here.
So TCU's 17.3 points per game is what they're allowing. So I wasn't surprised at that, especially with the backup quarterback. Now, here's the thing Oklahoma fans have to be ready for is that Kansas State's the second leading defense and scoring defense in the Big 12.
Well, they're number one when they're playing in front of a home crowd.
Well, I mean,
not that really matters.
That's what they're going to be doing on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when it comes to passing defense, you know, and that's where Oklahoma's bread and butter is with Baker Mayfield. And all of a sudden, Kansas State, you know, they're still top 5. They're still top half of the Big 12 in passing defense. They're right at number 4, just ahead of Oklahoma, by the way. Kansas State allowing 238 yards a game. Oklahoma allowing 241 yards per game. I think this game, Oklahoma's bread and butter is what they do off the arm of Baker Mayfield. But we've talked about this. We've talked about it. We've talked about it. The passing game is always set up by the running game. Look what happened in the Cotton Bowl. You know, Texas, the strength of the Texas defense was supposed to be against the run. And Trey Sermon gashed them early on. And what did that do? That set up Baker Mayfield to do what he does best with over 300 passing yards in that game. Texas number 2 in the Big 12 on run defense. They're only giving up 116 yards a game. And when you look at Trey Sermon having almost 100 yards on his own, pretty impressive. One of your topics that you had for this podcast, and it relates to the Texas game, is the running back situation. First of all, you know, if Rodney Anderson was in earshot of me on Saturday, I owe him an apology just because I kept saying, why is Rodney Anderson in the game? Why is Rodney Anderson in the game? But then when you know, everybody talks about Trey Sermon and what he did Saturday. Have you looked? Do you know the yards per carry?
I do.
I mean, they're equal.
That's because I've got him in front
okay.
of me.
I mean, Trey Sermon, 96 rushing yards.
Mm-hmm.
Rodney Anderson only had 48, but Rodney Anderson's came on 10 carries, so 4.8 yards per carry. And the score, once the game went on, I became more and more impressed with Rodney Anderson.
Right.
And early I'm going, where's Marcellus Sutton in all this? Why is he not? Because we haven't seen Marcellus Sutton. I mean, when Abdul Adams got injured against Iowa State, I thought Marcellus Sutton's going to come in. No, it's Rodney Anderson. And so what it tells me is when I came out with my depth chart, Abdul Adams, Marcellus Sutton, and then Trey Sermon as the closer, I was way off. You know, because I didn't even have Rodney Anderson on there. Mm-hmm. And obviously Rodney Anderson is thought of higher than Marcellus Sutton. Maybe it's veteran experience. Maybe it's blocking. I don't know. But what I do know is that Rodney Anderson we saw against this Texas run defense, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, for sure. We're halfway through this season at this point in time. And I think you were warranted because you and I watched the game, and I know what was said, as you had just mentioned, about Rodney Anderson, and I think those things were warranted. Mm-hmm. And we saw, at least what my takeaway, when Rodney Anderson was introduced on the field for hopefully the entire season this year, we saw him, again, just my opinion here, a little bit tentative, didn't have that burst of speed that we expected him to have, wasn't quite as shifty as we may have hoped him to be, but I think we're starting to see a little bit of that, and we're seeing that idea of him holding back kind of leaving him, and that mentality of I'm given the opportunity, so I'm going to make the most of it. We're seeing that come to fruition for him.
The flip side of that is I mean, this guy's missed basically 2 years of football. And so it takes a while to find your legs, so to speak.
And that's what I had said, was I felt like it was just him trying to shake off some of that rust. Get used to game speed action once again, as well as just being on the field with this group of players.
If Abdul Adams is not able to go this weekend in Manhattan, understanding what you got in Trey Sermon, understanding, what we saw, and hopefully that's the future of Rodney Anderson. You okay with them being without Abdul Adams going to Manhattan?
Going to Manhattan, yes. Moving forward, no.
Even against Texas Tech the following week? By the way, we've got to talk about Texas Tech at some point. I know there's a lot of OU stuff, but we've got to. The colossal collapse of Texas Tech is happening in front of our very eyes. I'm off. I mean, I've gone back and forth on Texas Tech. I mean, I want to give. And you were with me on Saturday. I'm texting out to our group. That first half, that opening drive, was like, man, I was totally wrong about Texas Tech. And then West Virginia responds, I was like, well, maybe I wasn't. And then by halftime, I'm like, okay, I was totally wrong about Texas Tech. This team is legit. And they only scored 7 points in the second half.
Yeah,
I mean, Cliff Kingsbury needs to be packing up his office. Because when you look at their schedule, I mean, go and look what the Red Raiders have left this season. They're Iowa State this weekend. I don't know that's a gimme. I mean, the way the Cyclones are playing right now, and I know it's in Lubbock, but still, do you take Iowa State in that game, or do you take Texas Tech in that game? Here's what people are going to do. They're going to take Iowa State based off a name only. They're going to say, well, yeah, it's Iowa State. And I do think at some point Iowa State's going to they're going to Iowa State. I mean, it's just what it is.
I don't know. Iowa State's already done that.
No, but they're still Iowa State is more in the running for the conference championship than Texas Tech is.
Iowa State has a different, I guess, connotation for me than it does for you, because I look at Iowa State as the team that has more often than not played the upset role.
Well,
and they've already done that.
I mean, they've played the upset role. Okay, they beat OU.
Mm-hmm. They beat OSU.
That was 2011. So you did it once in 2011. You did it again in 2017. That's not
trend.
No, it's not. That's just life in the Big 12. I mean, the rest of the time. I mean, how many times have we said this is the year? I mean, I love Paul Rhodes. I love the passion that he coached with. I love the personality he was, and I was actually a closet Iowa State fan because of Paul Rhodes. How many times have we
you
say?
You said that with past tense verbiage. Is that it?
Well, he's not at Iowa State anymore.
You said you were a closet Iowa State
just fan. Because of Paul Rhodes. Now, I do like Matt Campbell. I think Matt Campbell is a better coach than Paul Rhodes was. But the point is, you can't put your eggs in the Iowa State basket because they're going to get cracked, And the same thing with Texas Tech. And the thing is, Texas Tech has Iowa State at home. They're going to Norman. They have Kansas State at home. They have Baylor at home. They have TCU at home. And they end the season at Texas. Texas Tech was 4-0 going into Big 12 play. Since Big 12 play started, they're 1-2, and that one win is against Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I'm saying this is the same Texas Tech.
Well, it's who everyone expected them to be. I think people got a little bit swayed by that record, by that 4-0 start, and we all of a sudden saw a 4-1 Texas Tech team jump into the rankings.
For 1 week.
And then they face essentially one of the better offenses, a team that can go toe-to-toe with them on the offensive side of the ball in West Virginia. And granted, Texas Tech had that good start, but it was a tale of two halves because West Virginia finished strong. That's why Will Grier was the player of the week for the Big 12 on the offensive side of the ball because of what he was doing, not in the first half. It was all in that second half performance of that West Virginia offense.
The thing about it is, when I look at the Big 12 offenses and I think about explosiveness, West Virginia is maybe not even my top three. I think Oklahoma State is the most explosive offense in the Big 12.
In the country.
I think Oklahoma is the most consistent offense in the Big 12. And then I think you got to look at TCU. And then Texas Tech. And then so West Virginia is 4, maybe 5. And that game on Saturday in Morgantown, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail us this much, but that game in Morgantown on Saturday, that was a coaching clinic. Dana Holgorsen saw what Texas Tech had to offer in the first half. Dana Holgorsen made offensive and defensive adjustments at halftime, and Cliff Kingsbury was lost on the sideline in that second half. He was lost. He had no idea why the things that were working in the first half, he had no idea why they weren't working in the second half.
There are 4 teams with over 2,000 yards passing and 1,000 yards rushing in the Big 12.
Okay, name them.
One of those teams is not TCU.
Yeah, but okay.
One of those teams is not Baylor.
Well, obviously.
I mean, it's Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, West Virginia, and Texas Tech. Okay, you talk about explosive offenses. I think that's where it's
at. But how many points per game is TCU averaging?
Should I look that up?
It's over 40. I know it's over 40.
Yeah. TCU's averaging.
That's what I don't.
They're 41.3.
I don't put a lot of stock into. I like balance, and TCU is balanced. That's when you say run, passing, rushing.
But here's
I like the balance that TCU brings, and they're putting up points.
You're looking at points per game just in the Big 12 conference. TCU's 5th.
That's fine,
at 41 points.
And I'm going to guess who's. You have the stats open there.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess who's in front of them.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to guess Oklahoma State.
Number 1.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to guess Oklahoma.
Number 4.
I'm going to guess West Virginia.
Number 3.
I'm going to guess TCU. Texas Tech.
Number 2.
So.
I'm just saying. I'm kind of trying to gauge what your qualifier is.
The point I'm saying is, Texas Tech gave up a ton of yards and points in the second half,
right,
to a team that's not even the best offense in the Big 12. That's the point I'm making.
Right. I mean, the reality of the situation here is the teams in the Big 12 that are going to be in the top half are going to score 35 plus points a game. And 30 points in a game should allow you an opportunity to win.
Unless you're Kansas.
Well, they're not scoring 30 points a game.
But the point is, the most egregious thing was not the number of points that West Virginia put up. It's not even the limiting Texas Tech to 7 in the second half. The most egregious thing is how much Cliff Kingsbury got outcoached. Midway through the third quarter, you're seeing Dana Holgorsen you see the comfort level. He knows he's got it. He has figured it out. And you see where Cliff Kingsbury was the comfortable guy at halftime, you see the sweat box begin to develop on Cliff Kingsbury because he has no clue. He has no clue how to stop West Virginia. He has no clue how to move his offense.
Are you saying that Cliff Kingsbury is better suited for an offensive coordinator position?
Well, based off of what I saw Saturday, I think
the way things are trending.
Look, here's his pedigree. His pedigree is in developing quarterbacks. I think he's got a little bit of a Josh Heupel in him. He's great working with quarterbacks. I mean, go back to Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. He was integral in what Johnny Manziel did. Look at what he did with Patrick Mahomes. But there's a flip side of that where you had Davis Webb, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes, all those guys. Kingsbury had no idea how to manage that situation. And that's why all those guys left. And, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he was better than what I thought he was initially because he's making money as a backup in the NFL. But Patrick Mahomes won that job by default because everybody else left. So you've got that going on, the mismanagement of that situation. And then you've got the mismanagement of the game situation. If you're what's the magic number for Cliff Kingsbury?
What do you mean?
Well, I'm saying if you're on the board of directors, if you're a booster, if you're a fan, How many wins does he have to get to you for you to be comfortable saying this is going to be my coach next year as well?
That's a difficult question.
I think it has to be 7. I think at least has to be 7.
I was going to bump you up by 1.
It may be.
And the reality for me is because I know, just in what I've been reading, Iowa State was a team that set out to become bowl eligible this season. That was their goal.
Their goal, and they're going to get
that. So when you look at a team like Texas Tech, do you say that they have the same goal as an Iowa State team, who has Matt Campbell's a first-year head coach,
second year,
who has a second-year head coach who hasn't had the level of success that they've had at Texas Tech? Do you lump them into the same pile? No. So for me, it has to be 8. And you look at these other teams. Okay, I can see a loss. Oklahoma State. All of a sudden TCU, but you gain one because I would have expected a loss to Kansas State. I don't expect that anymore. And then you've got the loss to Oklahoma State, TCU, Oklahoma, and potentially I think they lose to Texas as well.
Well, that means they're not getting to 8.
Well, and like I said, they've
can only lose 4 times.
They've lost to West Virginia. They've already lost to Oklahoma State.
And they've got TCU on their schedule, Oklahoma on their schedule,
and Texas
on their schedule.
But like I said, that number's 8. They've got to get
Iowa State. I don't know that Iowa State's a guarantee, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's
even though it's in Lubbock.
It's true.
The way Iowa State's moving the ball, what they're figuring some things out offensively against that Texas Tech defense. I think Iowa State's going to gash the Texas Tech defense. And if Iowa State can come up with a game plan, hopefully they're watching film, dropping that 8 in coverage. Texas Tech's going to have to run the ball to win this game, and I don't know that they know how to do that on a consistent basis. So we're way off course. Let's go back to
the days of Mike Leach.
Well, okay, you're going to get me started on another thing. I mean, think about it.
You don't have to.
How long ago was 2008? Do you realize what happened in 2008? In 2008, Oklahoma played for the BCS championship. Texas Tech was knocking on the door. A late loss in Norman knocked Texas Tech out. But you know what else happened in 2008? This is going to blow your mind if you don't remember what happened in the Big 12 2008. Kansas won the Orange Bowl. They beat Virginia Tech in the Orange Bowl. 2 coaches that just weren't good enough for those respective programs. Mike Leach, Mark Mangino, they were too mean. They didn't talk nicely to the players. They didn't have the public image that those schools thought they could do better.
There were some bigger accusations,
but
than just not talking.
But at the end of the day, they weren't founded. I mean, the James family. Texas Tech buckled under pressure to Craig James and his son Adam. They just buckled under pressure. But what my point is, you have that little storm that develops. Mike Leach, he's overweight. He's a gruff personality. Mark Mangino, and he yells at the players. He cusses at them, and he belittles them. He motivated them. They won the Orange Bowl.
Right.
But you get
that was a good Kansas team.
You get that storm. That storm of and Mark Mangino built it, and you get that storm of public, perception building, and all of a sudden you think if you're Texas Tech, hey, a couple years ago we were knocking on the door of the BCS. We get Tommy Tuberville in here, and we can make it happen. A couple years ago we won the Orange Bowl. We get Charlie Weis to come in here. We can make it happen. And it has just completely imploded on both of those programs, but Kansas more so than Texas Tech. So, I mean, I'm sorry. That's a whole nother – whole grass is greener on the other side. That's why for years I said anytime someone wanted to bring up, hey, Bob Stoops is done in Oklahoma, who are you going to get that's better? And then Lincoln Riley, you got to look at the body of work, but I'm just telling you – Lincoln Riley's young. He's going to make mistakes. He made mistakes against Iowa State.
I mean, the dude's barely older than me.
So, anyway, all right, let's go back to the Cotton Bowl on Saturday. ESPN released their midseason All-American teams. Baker Mayfield leads that team. And before you think, well, that's really good for his Heisman campaign, you see Barkley on there. You see your boy Bryce Love on there. What is Baker Mayfield doing in your mind right now? That obviously he's doing a lot of good, but is there anything out there that he's doing that just makes you go, this bothers me? Can you see anything? I got one thing. I don't know if you got anything.
No. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. And the reality is I have a lot of arguments on the opposite side of the fence.
Like, give me an example.
So one of the things when I look at Baker Mayfield and say, why is he the best quarterback in the country? It's because he's made those around him better. We talked about the receiving group that was coming in this year, literally a list of names that were unknown to most people, including Jeff Badette, because here's a guy from the SEC coming over playing in the Big 12.
Right.
We knew what he was capable of in the SEC in that system. Did he really fit what was going on here at Oklahoma, and would he excel in a system like that? You've got a guy like CeeDee Lamb. Of course, Mark Andrews was the most mentioned name when it came to that receiving group. And then you've got Marquise Brown. So when I'm looking at the group, relative unknowns, but what has happened, Baker Mayfield has trusted them, and he's put up big numbers because of it.
Yeah, you're right. You're spot on, and that's a great assessment. To me, and I agree with you, I want to go back. The one thing that he's doing that I would like to see him do less of is he's holding the ball way too long.
Which is something they wanted him to do this year.
Well, I don't know. I don't think they wanted him to hold it that. They
didn't want him to tuck it and run quickly.
But I'm thinking because of that, because they don't want him to tuck and run, think about Iowa State, that final play.
Mm-hmm.
It's 4th and 4. You got to get the first down. He could have ran, in my opinion, for the first down. But he holds the ball for so long that window to run closes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think Baker Mayfield, best quarterback in the country. I mean, I'm just giving constructive criticism here. This is not a knock in any way against Baker Mayfield. But there's one thing if I could get him to do one thing different, it would be once you recognize that window to run has closed, get rid of the ball. Just get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Throw it 15 rows into the stands. And I think we saw that happen a little bit Saturday where he recognized that window to run is closing and he ran. He had a couple of good runs against Texas.
With that big first down.
Right.
And
he also, when he took the shot, they kind of wobbled him a little bit.
Go ahead.
Well, he held the ball too long.
Okay, I was going to talk about the injury, quote unquote, specifically.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying. Those are things that when you can. There's something to be said about recognizing your windows,
mm-hmm.
and these are the things when he gets to the next level, when he gets a chance to play for an NFL team, they're going to want. You've got to make a decision. And at some point, it's okay to give up on a play. You're the most explosive offense, one of the most explosive offenses in the country. Give up on that play.
The reality
and play the next down.
To your point, 2nd and 10 is better than 2nd and 15.
Exactly. Any day of the
or
week.
3rd and 15,
right.
Because you would have given up that down.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely, I agree with you in saying that you do have to recognize those as a senior, a 5th-year senior playing quarterback, leading this team. Pick your moments.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. Like I said, I wouldn't have just picked that out of thin air, but because you've swayed me, I'll jump on board with it.
You wanted to say something about his injury, though.
Yeah. And this is neither here nor there, really, because I thought this is where you were going, so that's why I kind of tried to jump in. Was, one, I know people would be upset. They would say it was a late hit. Whether it was or it wasn't, Baker Mayfield still got hit. He was going to get hit. That wasn't going to change. We see at the same time, I think a lot of people assume that it was a shoulder, potentially a rib type injury. I did go back and watch that. I don't know if you had an opportunity to. And instead of watching the play, I watched Baker Mayfield. Right. When he finally stands up, he's shaking his hand, which to me it says that he jammed a thumb on that. And it was just maybe it was in there too tightly that when the guy came across, it jammed a finger. I don't think it was a shoulder. Yeah. I don't think it was a rib. I don't think it's anything serious.
I don't think it is. I mean, he came back and won the game.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one other option, though, sometimes you get that stinger when your neck gets torqued and it causes that tingle and numbness that could have been. I was okay with the play not being flagged. I don't feel like maybe it was a little bit late, but I don't think it was so late that you think, well, that's just a dirty play.
Baker Mayfield was in the action. He was going down. He was throwing the ball at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the play, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's already got one guy bringing him down. And as he's down, and then the other guy comes in on top. I thought the potential for Ellinger's injury to be way more serious than Baker.
Well, he was knocked out. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
I agree with you. I agree. I mean, he was asleep. We both saw it. But, Herman said after the game that he never lost consciousness. And Ellinger said he never lost consciousness. I'm with you. I agree. I'm just telling you I'm just saying what's coming from the Texas side. And then they said yesterday that they reevaluated him again on Sunday, just to make sure everything's good. And he's cleared to go the week.
Kid's tough.
I mean,
Kid's extremely tough.
That was a shot that when it happened, we both looked at each other and thought, "Dang, that's gonna hurt."
And with Ellinger laying there on the way his body was contorted, told me. With no movement, he was still clutching the ball.
Yeah.
So I guess you could see that going both ways, but the reality is Ellinger misses 5 plays because of that.
Yeah. Well, you have to go. I mean, you have to go through the protocol.
I understand that. So regardless of what they're saying, the actions that were taken after that tell me that there was potential for serious injury.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something else on the 2 quarterback injuries, because I heard this week. Someone had brought it up to me. And then I heard it again on the radio, and I think it's off a little bit. The reaction of the crowd. That what was told to me was, he said, did you notice that when Baker Mayfield went down, the Texas crowd just exploded, cheering, and when Ellinger went down, it was silence. I mean, even OU fans were silence. But you got to understand what's going on when Baker Mayfield went down. I mean, there's a fight about to take place. And to me, the bigger indicator of unity was not what the crowd did. I think the crowd was egging on the extracurricular stuff. They weren't cheering that Baker was hurt.
I agree with
But notice, again, if you go back and watch it, notice when Baker goes down, that offensive line, they go to war. I mean, they are going to war right there on the field for their quarterback. What happened when Ellinger went down? There was a bunch of standing around, people going, man, I hope he's okay. No one stood up. No one got in anybody's face. It just shows you the significance that each of those quarterbacks have with their respective teams. Ellinger's only a freshman. He's not.
And Ellinger wasn't even expected to start this season.
He's not developed that rapport yet. But I mean, when that offensive line saw their quarterback on the ground, it was very personal to them, and that's the difference between. When you look at
one quarterback buying pizzas for,
well, no, it's true. I mean, it's just Jason Wright used to take his offensive line out for steak dinners.
Samaje Perine did that too.
Right. So it just shows you want to know how much Baker Mayfield means to this team. It's a lot more than just throwing the football. I mean, he is their guy. Okay. Any closing thoughts on the Cotton Bowl? Because I'm gonna ask you one more thing after you give me a chance.
I will say this is one of the things that you and I discussed. Texas comes in; they're a ranked team heading into the season. Things kind of
which they should not have been. Sorry, they should not have been.
Things go south. They drop out of the rankings.
Sorry, I gotta harp on this. I gotta harp on this. If Texas doesn't win another game this year, if they just go 0-5 to close out the season, you realize they're going to be an AP top 25 team next year, right? It's like college football season's here. Texas is in the top 25. Sorry, go ahead.
The reality for me was one of the questions that you and I had discussed was what worries us about Texas. And I had said it was the improvements that they're making on defense. Were they really making improvements, or like with Oklahoma, is that just who they've been? They needed really to just find that identity. And so I will say Texas defense is going to give a lot of people fits throughout the rest of the year. And it's why we're talking about a team like Texas Tech. Can they beat Texas? So I wouldn't sleep on a Texas program under Tom Herman's direction at this point in time. There's work to be made, or there's progress to be made. We'll say it that way. Work needs to be put in, and they are a team that is on the up and up at this point. As much as I despise anything burnt orange, I do think they are a team to watch out for in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, I said this on my radio show, my segment, not my radio show, the segment I do on radio with Fox. I don't think 20-0, a Charlie Strong team quits. Mac Brown, in the last 5 years of his tenure, that team quits. Tom Herman's team didn't quit. 20-0, there's still a lot of fight left in them. And that interception, Baker's first of the season, really was a game changer for them. And when you talk about Tom Herman I said this when he was hired. Tom Herman is the first Texas coach that has bothered me because of the potential he has. If you're an Oklahoma fan, what you really want to hope for, in my opinion, what you really want to hope for is that the NFL lures Tom Herman away from Austin. I'm serious. I think the guy's a winner. I look at what he's got. I look at even the fairy dust thing. He overcame that. I think he's got the team. The team, he's got them. Because if he had lost the team, then they're quitting on Saturday in the Cotton Bowl. I think he has this could go back to the early 2000s. 2000 to 2006 when it's Oklahoma and Texas dominating the Big 12. And those were fun times. Those were fun times because you knew that the best of Bob Stoops was always going to get the best of Mack Brown. You knew that. Think about when Mack Brown beat Oklahoma. Think about it. 1999, Bob Stoops' first year. 2005, you got an injury-plagued program. 2009, you got an injury-plagued program. The only time in my recollection, the only time you can think that Mack Brown beat the best of Bob Stoops was 2008. And if you'll remember, 2008, that game changed when Ryan Reynolds got hurt, the linebacker for Oklahoma. Texas always had Oklahoma's leftovers. When was Texas the best in the 2000s? 2005, 2009 were their best years. What coincidentally happened those years? Those were Oklahoma's down years. So you knew, even with Mack Brown, you knew that the best of Mack Brown was never going to beat the best of Bob Stoops. I don't know you can say that about Tom Herman. I don't think you can say that at all. So I'm going the long way around to saying I think you're right.
The one thing I wish I could do is let's just pretend here that in a couple of years with the Big 12 championship game, Tom Herman is sitting there fielding questions from the media. I want to be there, and I want to be that person who asks, so did you finally find that fairy dust?
Okay. The most shocking thing that you saw happen in the Cotton Bowl, and this is how we're going to close it out. The most shocking thing that you saw happen in the Cotton Bowl on Saturday was what?
Matt, we've harped on this so many times. The most shocking thing is that giving up a 20-point lead.
Is it really? After it's happened 3 weeks in a row, you were okay.
Absolutely. Right. I can excuse the game against Baylor, not so much against Iowa State. Three times is a trend. And so, unfortunately, I didn't think that would happen. I thought these would be guys who had finally become fully healthy. If there was something going on with Jordan Thomas, we wouldn't see any of those issues. I think a lot of the reason why is because they shaded a safety his way, which kept Ellinger from throwing that way specifically. But needless to say, what does this team look like moving forward for Oklahoma? Is this the norm? Is this what I should expect?
That's what I was saying. They're going to have to win shootouts.
No. I'm not saying they're going to have to win shootouts. What I am saying, though, is if they don't, for some weird reason, get out of this weird trend, then I still don't think you're right. I still don't think it's down to shootouts. Because, shootouts to me are 50-plus points. You're putting up, between the two teams, 110, 120 points. That's a shootout. So, for instance, I think a good example, because Texas Tech is coming up in 2 weeks for Oklahoma, that 65 or 66-59 win last year, that's a shootout.
Okay. We just have different
29-24.
To me, when you're scoring in the fourth quarter, when you're back and forth, that game turned into a shootout. It went from a blowout to a shootout, in my opinion. To me, the most shocking thing, and you hinted to this, or you addressed it, the most shocking thing I saw in the Cotton Bowl on Saturday was Texas's failure to try to really challenge Jordan Thomas. Even with shading the safety, there's things you can come up with to draw that safety. You can run an underneath route and a deep route, and they didn't do it. They never tried to get Jordan Thomas. Like I said, even when you're shading a safety, you can bring a tight end into that cushion of the zone, and it has to draw that safety up. Right. And then you go a guy deep, and it never happened.
We saw that on Motley's side.
Right.
I think, which is why, not necessarily why, but we did see a handful of big plays from Texas that were unlikely.
Okay, Oklahoma at Kansas State this Saturday, 3 o'clock kickoff. Fox Television. Sooners 5-1, 2-1 in the Big 12. For everybody except for TCU. By the way, TCU has Kansas at home. That's blowout bad. I'll come back to Kansas, but everybody, I'm so distracted today. Maybe it's the cold medicine I'm taking. I don't know. But everybody except for TCU, it's basically an elimination weekend. Texas or Oklahoma State, that's an elimination game. In my opinion, that elimination mark is 2 losses. Mm-hmm. It's hard to overcome 2 losses.
Absolutely.
So for either Oklahoma State or Texas, they're going to be eliminated this weekend from the Big 12 championship. Iowa State has a chance to kind of spit on the grave of Texas Tech. They were eliminated last weekend, but the Cyclones are still very much alive in it. Kansas State has the same thing. They can put Oklahoma to sleep. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm more comfortable going into this Kansas State game than I've been in a while, just because, like I said, I think Kansas State's going to score points, and it wouldn't shock me at all to see Oklahoma go up 17-0, and then this game draw like the 17-10, 17-14. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, though, I don't think Kansas State has the horses. Offensively, for Oklahoma, what do you expect?
What I expect really is Oklahoma, one, to control the clock, because we know that that's what Kansas State's good at. It's what they're going to attempt to do. I think Oklahoma can beat them at that game. Mm-hmm. They've done fairly decently throughout the duration of the season, through 6 games, obviously, at controlling the clock. So offensively, I expect Oklahoma to control the clock, and I expect them to run the ball more than they pass. I don't have a specific reason for that, but if I'm going with control the clock, it sounded really good in my head at this point in time. But the reality is you have good running backs. They'll pass to keep the defense honest. But again, I don't think, if we're talking about shootout type potential here, I don't think Oklahoma wants to play a game on the road that's shootout worthy.
I don't think Kansas State has shootout.
I don't either,
offense.
but you just said it could be 17
I think it's going to be
and
close.
then 14, 17.
I think there's going to be momentum shifts in this game. Kansas State's averaging, they allow 3.4 yards per carry. They're middle of the pack against the run.
How about I say it this way?
Okay.
My expectations is that I expect Trey Sermon to be the MVP of the game.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What if Abdul Adams comes back?
I still expect Trey Sermon to be the MVP.
I think offensively, what I expect, I really think, Oklahoma is going to really look at film this week. Not that they haven't looked at film, but I think the focus on this week is going to be clean. We want to play a clean game. I think Oklahoma is going to look at trimming down the penalties. They're going to look at protecting the ball, and they're going to look at efficiency. I think it's going to be a balanced attack. You said run heavy. It may be run heavy, but I think it's going to be very, very close. I was way off last week when I said Oklahoma would throw the ball close to 60 times. I didn't expect Trey Sermon just to go off on the Texas defense like he did. I think what that speaks to me is this offensive line. Oklahoma's offensive line, in my opinion, is the best offensive line in the country. And what that allows them to do is allows them to be balanced. And when you're balanced, that's bad news for most of the defenses in the Big 12. Why was TCU so successful against Oklahoma State? Because of balance. And I think when you're looking at a defense that's top 5 against the run, top 5 against the pass, if you can bring balance, you're going to have that defense on its heels. Mm-hmm. And I think the majority of Oklahoma's scores on Saturday are going to come on big plays, big yardage plays, because the balance is going to set that up. Defensively, what do you expect?
Defensively, I expect Oklahoma really to make Kansas State one-dimensional, and that one dimension is they're going to force them to pass in order to be successful in scoring the ball in this game. Not that they would score an orange or an apple or anything like that. They will score the ball. So, like I said, realistically, will Kansas State score some points? I do think that they do score. I don't think it's a shutout, but I think it's very limited scoring. Kansas State maybe takes advantage of some things that they've seen in the past 3 games from this Oklahoma defense, but I don't see them scoring more than 20 points. There's just no way.
I do, and we'll come to that when we do our predictions. I think defensively you're right. I think you play to stop the run. But what that does is that leaves the secondary susceptible. Because if you're playing to stop the run, there's going to be some one-on-one coverage. And I don't know. Here's the two things I don't know about Kansas State, and they could be huge factors in this game. I'm approaching this game as if Jesse Ertz is going to play, but I don't know. I know it's a different offense with Jesse Ertz at the helm than it is with this other kid. The second thing I don't know is Kansas State's backs were against the wall against TCU. It was a two-game losing streak. TCU was the third team. You won the top teams in the Big 12. You have a chance still to make a statement, and they got it handed to them. I don't know how much fight's left. I love Bill Snyder as a coach. I think he's a wizard, literally, when it comes to coaching X's and O's. I don't know how much he has of managing this team anymore, and I don't know how much fight this team has left in it. We'll see on Saturday, but if OU gets out big again, they may throw in the towel. A team that has definitely thrown in the towel is the Kansas Jayhawks. We're going to come to that. This is a Sooner Nation, the online podcast of Heartland-Sports.com. Let's go through the Big 12 rundown as we're kind of getting to the nitty-gritty of our podcast. Big game this week. I like the time difference because we're going to be able to catch both games. Oklahoma State visits Texas. Both teams 2-1 in the Big 12. Oklahoma 5-1 in the season. Texas 3-3. Texas is in the same position I thought Kansas State was in last week. Their backs are against the wall. They're a physical team. They're going to bring pressure on Mason Rudolph. The one thing you got to look at with this Oklahoma State offense is the question marks on the offensive line. Are they going to be able to have enough success to pressure Mason Rudolph into making some critical mistakes throwing? And can they pull off the upset? Your thoughts?
This one for Texas absolutely comes down to the turnover margin because I don't think anyone can keep pace with the Oklahoma State offense.
Right.
So the best tool that Texas has been fairly successful at turning the ball over from teams. So I think they definitely try to play on that. And if they are successful in that, then they can keep this one close and potentially score that upset win. If it doesn't happen, I think Oklahoma State wins comfortably. And that's just because the newness of the offensive line for Texas combined with the true freshman at quarterback. He will make a freshman mistake here and there. It's when will those come and how crucial will they be?
When you look at Texas against the top teams they've faced, USC, which we all agree was way overranked, Oklahoma, now Oklahoma State, they've been able to keep those games close.
Right.
They've been in them. But the top teams that they played have been on the road. They had to go to the Coliseum. They had to go to the Cotton Bowl. If they sell out the stadium, I don't know. I mean, Texas fans are fickle. But if that's a packed stadium and they get this thing close, can they ride to the upset? I don't think so. I think we see Texas eliminated this weekend from the Big 12 championship. If they win, then I think they put the Big 12 on notice. I really do. Because if they win, they're still in that hunt. And all of a sudden, Oklahoma State goes from promising to disappointing. I'm curious to see how they respond to that. Iowa State at Texas Tech, I am looking forward to this game. I will be going back and forth between Oklahoma State and Texas in this game just because I think this is going to be a fun game to watch. Your thoughts?
Iowa State is playing with really a sense of urgency that I don't see from a Texas Tech team. And that spawned from the win in Norman for Iowa State. Their defense produced a shutout. Again, things that aren't that common. I didn't expect them to go play Kansas, who we know will be the cellar dweller, and blank them, plus putting up 45 points of their own.
Right.
Needless to say, again, it'll be an interesting game. It's on the road. It's in Lubbock. Texas Tech has some offensive firepower. Can Iowa State match them? I don't know how that's going to play out. But if I were to give the edge to someone right now, I like the way Iowa State's playing. I've got to give it to them.
Iowa State, hot team right now. Texas Tech circling the wagons, 1-2 in the Big 12, 4-2 overall. It's do or die time. I'm telling you, if Cliff Kingsbury loses this game, the pressure cooker is on for him. I think Texas Tech pulls this game out. I think Iowa State, it's an emotional high for them right now. Coming off Oklahoma, just drubbing Kansas. They've got a lot of confidence.
Which goes a long way.
It does go a long way, but if Texas Tech is able to come out early and put points on the board, what happens to Iowa State on the road? I like Texas Tech. Kansas at TCU. This game is going to be ugly from the get-go. 38.5-point favorite for the Horned Frogs. Kansas is a team that's quick. Kansas is a team, they're done. I was at start of the season thinking David Beatty needs, more time. I think now it's time to make a change if you're the Jayhawks. But where do you go? Who do you look at? This game's not even going to draw any attention at all from me.
Just
and
odd
neither
that
is
it's
West
a night
Virginia.
game.
Yeah, it's a primetime game, which that makes no sense to me. You got West Virginia and Baylor going at the same time. That's more of a, West Virginia Baylor's not even picked up by a network at this point that I'm aware of. But Kansas at TCU is on Fox. And that's the only reason because it's TCU.
Yeah, they want to showcase a college football playoff candidate.
Right. And so, but West Virginia at Baylor draws more interest to me than Kansas TCU. All right, here we go. Money on the line. Sooners 13.5-point favorites at Kansas State. OU back in the top 10. Give me your score prediction.
I do think they cover that, actually. As I was thinking about the score, I was going to give OU a handful of touchdowns and a couple field goals, putting them at 34 points. And I told you I didn't believe that Kansas State would score 20. The offense has continued to struggle. That's largely dependent on who steps out at quarterback.
Right.
And right now, I'm not saying that's Jesse Ertz. So my score prediction, maybe I should type this out so I don't have to rethink about it, and can send that in a little bit later, is Oklahoma 34, Kansas State 17.
Yes, yeah, I'm with you on OU. I got 35 for OU, but I'm not sold, man. I'm telling you, I'm not sold on the defense yet. I thought they played better. I said this. I said it on Twitter. I said it in a post. Imagine how much more of an impact Obo would have had on that game had Texas actually been flagged for holding. There's still so much going against this defense. I don't trust them to win by a large margin. I've got 35-28 because it's on the road. I want to be wrong on that, but until this defense proves otherwise to me, that's what I'm going to go with. He's Rich. I'm Matt. Heartland-sports.com. NBA season starting up. Oklahoma City Thunder playing on Thursday night. The Thunder guys do a great job at covering the Oklahoma City Thunder at Heartland Sports. You can catch us on Twitter at SportsHeartland, and find us online, heartlandsports.com. Thanks for listening. Take care. We'll see you later.